Now let's talk a little bit about employment in general and interviews, right? So the situation has changed dramatically over the past, I don't know, 5 years, right, in South Korea. Koreans are now very much more open to hiring foreigners than before. And at the same time, it became a bit more difficult for foreigners to get a job because a long time ago, let's say 10 years ago, right, 10, 15 years ago, Korean companies wanted to hire a foreigner because they wanted to show that their company is global, right? So there was this idea that if we have foreigners in a company, we are global, we are, present in, internationally. And so they didn't even require that much from foreigners. They didn't require Korean language, they didn't require any experience. They were just thinking that they will teach everything, in exchange of having a foreigner in their company, right? Now it's very different because South Korea has attracted a lot more foreigners since that. And also these foreigners that are now in South Korea, they are like great in Korean. So many people have TOEIC over 4 level 4 right now, right? And so it's difficult and it's the competition is rough, right? So let's say 15 years ago, no one would require a Korean language from you. Now everyone would require a Korean language from you at some point, right? So it's kind of like two-side situation. Now about the interviews. Again, long time ago, if you go and you say, oh, can I, just have an interview in English, everybody would be like, even if they don't speak English, they would, kind of try to have it in English. These days, if you say, oh, can I speak in English, they would be like, no. If they don't speak English, you would just be lost there, right? So everything you can do here is either practice your Korean to the point where you at least can pass the interview, or use Konglish again, but not like full, English. This would not work now. Yeah. Now, CVs. Even if you apply as a foreigner and they know you're a foreigner, your CV has to be in Korean, right? Even if you apply in English and let's say they get interested and they would like to ask you to have an interview, they would still ask you to send them a CV in Korean because most companies, they have management of people who are Korean people, right? And well, majority of them, they are not so good at English, right? So still prepare your CV in Korean. Now, I know that everybody's using GPT these days, right? But also be careful with using ChatGPT, because it's, I can tell that the CV was made in ChatGPT, right? So try to kind of be like 50-50, because if I see myself as an HR that the CV was made completely with the help of ChatGPT, and I cannot read any individual approach or something that the person really contributed to the CV there, that means probably the no right away, right? So use it, but carefully. Also, you probably know in the Korean CV, there's a part of where you have to introduce yourself, right? Self-intro. And the self-intro part is also very tricky because you need to put certain information in the self-intro part, right? So you need to tell about yourself, but also it's not like you need to tell them about yourself as a person, right? No one is interested in your, how many siblings you have, or what kind of hobbies you got or whatever, right? So you need to write the self-intro as an expert or as a professional, showing your professional skills, and plus a little bit of soft skill, right? So they can still, guess what personality you have and what kind of person you are. And so writing self-intro, it also requires a skill, right? What kind of information you need to show, what kind of information you need to highlight in your self-intro, and what kind of information you do not need to show. For example, there is a part in your CV that is called 성장 과정, right? This is where you talk about your family, let's say, right? Your family background. A lot of people started saying oh, I have a brother and a sister, and my sister, she's that, and my brother, whatever, This is not necessary, right? So when they want to know about your family, they basically want to know what kind of background you were raised in, what values you were taught, and let's say there's some information that is really like a plus to your CV to show. For example, your parents are professors in your country, whatever. Or they are in, they are doctors, right? So all these jobs that are very high valued in Korea. Of course, it's a must to show that, because if Koreans see that your parents are whatever, doctors or professors, there's a big chance they'd be like, oh, okay, this person is from good background, this person is probably well educated, blah blah blah, right? Now, I had a student who was writing this part, and she was writing like, okay, my dad was just I don't know, company employee, and then he retired, and now he's working as a taxi driver, blah blah blah, right? So okay, me personally, I have nothing against taxi drivers, and you know, especially after you retire, you just do whatever you want to do, and it's okay, right? But not in this country. If your dad retired and he's a taxi driver, now you do not necessarily need to show that on your resume. Yes, this is how prejudiced it is, unfortunately, but you need to know the reality in order to understand, again, what you have to write and what you better not, okay? Okay, let's move on. This is another thing, probably because you guys are living in Korea, you already know how looks are important here, right? Otherwise, why would they have so many plastic surgery clinics all around the city? Unfortunately, yes, first of all, yes, you need to put your picture on the CV. And yes, they will look at this. It will be one of the consideration points. And so, you know, probably there are a lot of staging ones, right? These photo studios. And if you have ever taken any picture in South Korea, then you know that they will Photoshop you, right? You don't even need to ask for that. They will do it anyway. So the reason they do it is because they need to make you look more like attractive, but it's not like, you know, necessarily beautiful, but just like in general, so you have this kind of first impression of a like attractive person, right? And so unfortunately, yes, they look at it. And I had one guy in Habsida, one of our graduates. So he wasn't really buying it, all of it, and he just took a picture, like, you know, against the wall in his house, a selfie. And that, and plus his like face when it was still, it wasn't very like friendly, you know. So we were trying to send his CD out, you know, there was like some companies called, but you know, not so many. And so I was like, okay, so why don't we try and just change your picture and like, you know, Photoshop a little bit, you know, make it more smiley and just, you know, more friendly. And so right after we did it, the calls that he was getting from companies, they were more often. And yeah, in general, it's not the major part, but you still have to consider when you do that. Okay. Experience. This is kind of tricky part again, because as a university graduate, you will probably not have much of experience to show, right? And that's okay. You know, like in Western culture, even if you are graduating, you still need to show an experience already, you know, as a graduate. So that means you probably need to do a lot of internships or whatever. In Korea, they understand that you are like, you know, just graduated, and they are fine with you not having any experience. But at least you need to show that you did a lot of like 활동, right? A lot of activities, let's say, inside the school. So that's why you need to join all the clubs possible. You need to join all this like volunteering practices, so you can show on your CV that you are like proactive person and you are like participating in social life a lot, and that will also show them that you are like a team worker, you know, that you know how to work in a team. Now, if you have some experience, it's better to show it. Let's say you did an internship, right? It's also good to show it not as an internship, but if you already, you know, worked in this company. Okay, and you can negotiate it with the company, and you know, if they agree that, you know, you can show it as a real experience as you were an employee, then you can just fully go with it, because it's very important to pass the first stage, the document screening, right? As soon as you pass the document screening and you get to the interview, it means you're already like halfway through, right? And basically you just only need to show what kind of person you are, and you know, how you are with people and your skills and whatever. But if you cannot get to the stage of the document screening, well, it probably means, you know, you will never even get the chance to get to the company, to speak to the company, right? So in order to pass this document screening, you need to make your CV look as much more attractive as you can. And yes, showing sometimes internships as real experience also can work. Okay. Oh, self-intro, I already talked about it. Maybe just a little bit more. So there are four major parts in your self-intro. The first part I already said, it's your, let's say, family background, how you were raised, what kind of values you were taught, what kind of family you lived in. The second is, it's called education, 학력. It's about your experience in university. And this is also kind of interesting because let's say, like some of our graduates in Habsida, they apply for the position of software engineer, right, developer, designer, but their actual education, let's say, is like medicine or I don't know, like tourism or like hotel business, right? And so it's not really it's not related at all. But you still need to show in your education something that would benefit the company that you apply to. So in this case, you need to talk not really about your the subjects that you learn, because if you studied medicine, I don't know, it's not much related to the IT, right? So you just need to show that you let's say had a lot of interest in IT already, being a student, and you participated in this clubs related to IT while in university, right? So try to turn all information that you present in your self-intro to the area where you will be applying, even if it's not related, to your major at all. It would be good to still write somehow that they read it and understand, like, okay, the major is not related to what we do, but this person had long interest in this area for a long time, and so this person still had some experience in this area, and so we can talk to him or talk to her. Oh, one more time. There is a last point in self-intro. It's about your future aspirations, okay? And Koreans really like when you write your future aspirations with big ambitions, even like, something like unbelievable. I don't know, for some reason, they really like when a person has this big picture and big understanding of their life, right? And so even if you go and have interviews, sometimes you would get questions like, so what is your dream? What is your lifetime plan? And people just like, okay, I just need to get a job, and I just need to get visa in this country, whatever. Right? But you can't say that. You need to answer as if you have this like big, great, marvelous plan for your life, and it should be big and it should be ambitious, and they should be like, oh wow, like this person is, so ambitious, has such a great plan. So even if it's hard to believe in it, you still have to write it like this. Okay, regarding sending out the CVs, this is one major point all of my students face when they start applying. They always ask me, Jenny, oh, but I read this job description, it doesn't match my skills, it doesn't match my experience. Should I apply or not? But the company looks good, and I always tell them, apply. Because even if you apply, if they decide not to call you, it's their decision, right? If they decide to call you, it's their decision, right? It's their responsibility. So do not really get into this job description much, because you will just waste a lot of time. If you see some keywords that you are interested, maybe you are related to this company somehow, maybe it's marketing, I don't know, if you studied something related, maybe not exactly marketing, you can apply, right? No, there's no harm in applying. If the company decides, even though you are not a 100% match, if the company decides to invite you for an interview, it's the company's decision, right? You do not need to feel sorry for like, oh, like, why did they invite me? I feel so sorry. I'm not like a good match. Why did they call me? It shouldn't be like this. If they called you, probably because they see something else that you do not see, that you can do and benefit the company, okay? So my advice is always send all the resumes you can. The more the better. Okay, this is for this we did for people who do not speak fluent Korean. So sometimes when the companies call, and most of our graduates, they do not speak fluent Korean, they are like and so they never call back, right? So what you can say, for example, I don't know if you can read. 운전 중이라서 메시지를 보내주실 수 있나요? Like, oh, I'm driving right now, can you send me a message? And so when they send you a message, you can translate it, and they'd be like, oh, okay. I can reply now. But if they call and they're like, oh, no, 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 and then you're like, oh, ne, and they're like, keep talking, you're like, oh, ne, and then so they understand that you do not understand, right? And so they just hang up and never call you back. This is bad. So you can either say, oh, I'm driving, can you send me a message? Or you can say like, oh, I'm in the meeting. Oh, 지금 meeting 중이에요. And they, can you send me a message, right? So if they send the message, which happens sometimes too, then you can like read, you can get to know what the company is, and you can reply as a normal person, not like a retarded foreigner, right? So yeah, you can use this like that. This is obvious for me, but somehow not very obvious for many people. Before you go to the company, you need to research what the company is, right? And it's very funny, but some of my students, they would go for an interview and they would forget the name of the company. And so when they are at the interview, and some of the company members, they would be like, so do you know what our company name is? And they'd be like, and so it's just bad all the way, right? So please remember the company name you are going to have an interview with, and also research what the company is doing. So when you go there, you can show that you did your research, you know their projects, you know how to contribute, you know how to benefit, you can offer something that the company can benefit from hiring you. So this would be, yes, and Koreans love when you know about what they do. They just, yeah, and they love when you praise them. Yeah. A very traditional way of having an interview in Korea for Korean people, right? Also for foreigners these days too. They ask you, tell us a little bit about yourself. 자기소개서부터, 하세요. So you need to prepare this like 1 minute self-intro, which is different from the one you are writing on your CV. It should be more dynamic, more prepared, right? And you should probably memorize it so they can see that you really prepared. In the Western world, they would not like it if they see that you came like a robot, super prepared, you memorized all the sentences. They would probably think this is this person is like probably hiding something. Why is she so prepared? This is unnatural, right? We want to see like a real personality. But in Korea, no, it's totally the opposite. They would love that you are so prepared. They would love the fact that you invested your time in preparation for this interview. So my advice, if they ask you to do self-intro, this 1 minute self-intro, it should be memorized. They should see that you practiced it, and it's not like, oh, 잠시만요, 저는, this is bad. Again, for those who are not fluent in Korean, they will ask this question for like 100%. They will be like, 근데 우리 팀은 영어 못하는데, like no one speaks English now in our team, right? And you're not fluent in Korean. What about the communication, right? And you have to prove them there will be no problem in communication, right? By saying, what could you say? Let's say, I'm like, 우리는 영어 못하는데, and you are like, you are not good in Korean. How will we, communicate? What can you answer on that? What would you say? I don't know how we're gonna communicate. It's not my problem, right? Okay, one of the options, you can either say, I know my speaking is not so fluent right now, but I understand 80% of what you're saying, even if you're not understanding. So you can say like, I constantly learn Korean, right? And so I understand everything you say, although my speaking is not so good. Plus, because there are so many apps, right? So many translators these days, and because most of the communication goes in written way, you can also say that there will be no problem with that, right? But yeah, you need to show them that you are very hardly studying Korean and you are very interested in learning Korean, and that you will be fluent in 3 months. Reminding about yourself is when the company called you, you talked, they had this little short interview over the phone, and they said, we'll get back to you, right? And then nothing happened. And it's okay if you remind about yourself. So basically you can just send them the message next day or like 2 days later and say, oh, we had an interview, you called me 2 days ago, why don't we have another call, or when would be a good time to have an interview, right? So remind them about yourself, because they can just simply forget. Because most of the companies, especially middle-sized companies, they don't have like an HR, right? A person who's contacting you is just another whatever, developer or like a salesperson, right? And it's not really their job, so they might forget. So it's okay if you remind about yourself. Okay, and finally, this will be our last slide. The girl with the shoes again, right? The girl who who got a new iPhone and the shoes for 5 million won. She was promoted very quickly, right? She showed her skills. She was promoted, and it happened that she had like to control and to manage 2 Korean girls. She's non-Korean. She's a foreigner, and in her team, right, there were 2 Korean girls under her. And they were not happy about it, right? They were not happy that she just came, that she's a foreigner, that she was promoted quickly in the beginning. Oh, and she was younger than them. And you know, in Korea, it's a big issue, right? She was younger. And so they were not listening, basically. And she had a hard time making them do their job, basically, right? What would you do? Would you go to your manager and be like, I have a problem with my team? No? No? What would you do? What would you do?
I will prove myself to them, or be one of them.
You would like go on their level and be friends with them?
Like, I'll prove to them like why I'm in this position. At the same time, build that connection with them so that they have a trust.
Okay. So you would try resolving it internally with them, right? Not with your manager.
Yeah,
who assigned you.
Because I think it will aggravate it on the more I complain.
Delivered to the manager. Okay. This is really depends, because Korean companies and the politics inside the companies is just, it's something similar they show in dramas. There are 2 ways. Something you offer is it's a good way, especially if these people are responsive, right? If they're just rebelling, no matter what you do, if they decided to just rebel, it probably would not work. And let's say you try this strategy, you try to prove that you worth it, that you are friendly, that you would like to build a good team and good relationship. This is something she finally did, and it worked, right? But there is no harm at the end if this doesn't work, right? And your team is not responsive and they are just not willing to work together. It's absolutely okay to have a talk with your senior, right, about the situation. And because if the senior assigns you to this position, that already means that the senior is on your side, pretty much always. And this gives you this kind of support from the management to do whatever you need to do to achieve the goal, right? So do not, I know in the Western culture, it might look like you are like complaining, right? And you're like complaining and like, oh, these people are not working, but in Korea, it's kind of very normal. And that's all they do. They just complain behind everyone's back, constantly. And so this is normal. And they don't even consider this. They don't see it as complaining. They just see it as like doing their job, right? To deliver whatever they need to deliver. So keep that in mind, and of course try to work with your team in a good way, because you still need to work together. But if it doesn't work, it's totally fine to talk to the manager. Okay, I think that's it.